Hello, everyone. Whichever part of the world you are, welcome to DNA Behaviors webinar series on virtual teams. So this is a third webinar of the 8-part series of Business DNA. So I'm very excited to take part of this webinar. I'm filling in for Leon Morales, our Managing Director. He will be in an equally important venue this afternoon, so we had to make the necessary changes. So of course, that's not a problem at all. And we're here. And this is just one of the many examples of how a team would work under pressure, which Nikki and I will discuss in the next hour. Right, and the purpose of this webinar titled Working with Results-Focused Team is to really understand how a team who values achievement more than relationship can still work effectively and efficiently despite working remotely, despite working in the absence of a physical team and not being in the office. Working virtually, as you know, is very new to the majority of us, especially now with the crisis, right? So for most of you who don't know me yet, my name is Lisa Travis. I'm DNA Behaviors Business Development Analyst. So if the pandemic has a frontliner, I am DNA Behavior's standard bearer, and that's for financial DNA. I work mostly with financial advisors, investment firms, bankers, but I also do a little bit of business DNA. And we have the same goal to unlock key information, unlock communication, decision making, in a client-centered experience. Oh, I'm very excited to be in this webinar. And after Nikki introduces herself, I'll go over a few house rules. All right, so Nikki, it's your turn.
Thanks, Lisa. Great introduction. My name is Nikki Evans. I lead training here at DNA and am very excited to have you on with us today. Today, like Lisa mentioned, we'll be talking about results-focused teams, and then in our next webinar, we will be talking about relationship-focused teams, so you can kind of see the difference in personality styles drafted that way. So, with that said.
Thank you, Nikki. So just a few house rules as we go along. We have muted everyone to avoid unnecessary chatter or background noise, but we will entertain questions as we go along. There are also chat boxes on the bottom part of the screen, so we will answer that as fast as we can. But if your question merits everyone's benefit, then we will answer that at the end, or if Nikki can insert the answer to your questions, we can do that from time to time. This webinar is recorded, so the soonest possible time that I can send the recording and the slides will be an hour after the webinar. If there are technical issues, hopefully not, then the maximum time frame will be tomorrow morning. That's the recording and the slides. We make it possible to be interactive. So there will be 3 poll questions for this webinar, and I will be facilitating that. This webinar is set at 45 minutes, but we will try our best to keep it on time and not exceed, so you'll have the rest of the day. So, and a short survey will be after the webinar too. So as a start, we'll have the first poll question. And Nikki, can you launch the poll question on your end?
I think we're having trouble with the polls today. I don't have access to do that. I thought Leon was hopefully making that available to you, but it doesn't look like we have it. So if you could just put in the chat kind of what your answer is to this, what you miss most about working in an office. Is it 1, getting fast results, 2, connection with your teammates, or 3, you just don't miss being in the office? So,
all right, so we would know who's the extroverts and the introverts. Let's give them a few seconds. Okay.
Yep. right, we
Okay,
got
I guess I guess we will gather the answers to the poll questions right after the webinar, right? So we'll just make a note on that, and I'm sure it's not sometimes it's not comfortable to answer with your names on it. So
that's
we'll
all
just go
right.
along. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, just keep the answers coming in. I'll take a note on that. So
Perfect.
Nikki, I think you can start now. Thanks.
Great. So we're going to do just a quick overview of the 10 styles that DNA behavior has to get you oriented if you're not already familiar. And then the rest of the time that we'll spend together, we'll talk mostly about the results-oriented styles. So in our 10 styles, we kind of look at these 10 styles in kind of two dimensions, either fast-paced, which is above this green line, or more careful. And then the gray line here, more results oriented on this side, which will be the profiles that we're talking about today, or more relationship oriented on this side, which will be the profiles that we'll talk about next week. So influencers like to be, and so the influencer and the adapter profile that kind of ride the line between results and relationship. We'll put influencers in the results-oriented category, and we're going to put adapters in the relationship-oriented category. Influencers are very outgoing. They enjoy getting results done through others. They're visionary and evolutionary. They come up with great new ideas. Initiators, very results-focused, very driven to get results, tend to be fairly fast-paced in the way they think and speak. Strategists tend to be also very results oriented and faster paced, tend to be more careful and planned as well. Where your reflective thinkers and are more careful, they like to do more analysis, they're more detailed. Stylish thinkers are kind of interesting because they're very results focused, but they also have a component of very relational, and so they sometimes are seen in the relational, and we may see a sneak peek of them in the relational webinar as well. But they are very focused on getting things done. Adapters are our profile that rides the line kind of in the middle of everybody, and so adapters have the easiest time adapting their style to match other styles, and so sometimes it's difficult to peg an adapter because they fit so well in with lots of different styles. Facilitators tend to be very good as trainers. They tend to be patient with people. They tend to be fairly relational and instructional. Relationship builders, again, very warm and connective people, very empathetic, tend to value one-on-one relationship and family relationship. And then moving up into the faster paced community builders, love to build relationships with larger groups and community, love to connect people to one another. Engagers love to build on ideas and think of new things and help each other and help others be seen and heard. So that gives you just super basics. And if you'd like to learn more about our DNA profile styles and what they all mean, you'll learn a little bit more about those results-oriented profiles today. You'll learn a little bit more about the relational profiles in the webinar next week. But if you do have questions, you can always reach out to us and we'll give you that contact information at the end of the webinar today. So for our results-focused profiles, we're going to focus today on influencers, initiators, strategists, reflective thinkers, and stylish thinkers. So you'll see that they run the gamut between the faster paced and the more careful styles, but they're all on this more relationship or results-focused side. And Lisa kind of alluded to earlier today, I am an initiator, Lisa is an influencer, Leon, who was going to do the webinar with us, is also an initiator, and in his drive to be very fast-paced and get all of the results that we want, realized that he had signed himself up to be in 2 places at one time, which is something that people that are high fast-paced tend to do, especially when they're really results-focused. And so luckily, we had Lisa available and ready to jump in and go with the flow and both keep a good relationship with all of us and drive the results that we need to be here and help us deliver a great presentation today. So that's a little bit of some results focus at work, and faster paced. So I'm going to start with a little scenario of what it's like, what a results focused leadership team is like, and how that shows up and kind of what that looks like in a work environment. So in this scenario, this core leadership team of an international company meets every week with a team that is comprised of 3 initiators and 1 reflective thinker to review their progress, review their strategy, review key obstacles and larger team goals and work. So each of them represents a larger team. And so these leaders come together. And so you'll see, and this is fairly common, that teams some teams will tend to be fairly heavily focused on one style versus another, or one type of leaders or another, because people tend to enjoy and gravitate toward people that are like them. So it's not unusual to see a team like this where you would have 3 initiators and 1 reflective thinker, or 2 initiators and 2 reflective thinkers, where like attracts like. They have the easiest time working with one another because it doesn't require a lot of changing their profiles in order to connect well. This team happens to be very well versed in behaviors and does pay careful attention to profile styles and tries to work to ensure success of team members. So just something to keep in mind, that this team is very mindful that they're heavily focused on that results side and the faster paced side as a leadership team. So what does that mean for this team? So they share some strengths and struggles. For key strengths, what they've found to help them be great at walking through these meetings that they have once a week is to have a clear agenda and a process. And that helps the reflective thinker understand what's going to happen and predict what's going to happen. And it also helps that established process and agenda helps keep the initiators on track. There's also a well-established order of engagement, meaning that each person takes a turn. There are different sections. Everyone has an assigned area, and they take turns and they go through things in the exact same order each week. And this helps keep those initiators from taking over the meeting, not knowing if they're going to get to speak up, because they know exactly when it's going to be their turn. They know that they're going to have more than one opportunity to speak up, and they know exactly when those places are going to be. And it really helps keep the reflective thinker engaged, knowing that that person's got a chance to speak up and specific speaking roles in the meeting, as do the others. And so it keeps the initiators from taking over the meeting or jumping in where it's maybe not their turn, to allow space for the rest of the team members. Because with initiators, and with a lot of results focused profiles, but particularly the faster pace, the strategists, the initiators, and to some extent the influencers, ideas come so quickly and they want so much to have their opinion heard and be understood that it's often the case that they could jump in and try to take over because they have an idea and they just don't want to sit on it. They don't have the patience to sit on it. This team does remember to take a pause and ensure that all the information is considered and not on the table. And part of the way that they do that is to recap what's being said. And it's part of that is establishing that order of engagement and helping people understand what order they're going to get to speak in, and where there's a point for kind of recap and status updates with one another, and where there's a point for discussion and strategy meetings and for people to weigh in. And in those areas where they talk about strategy and there's a place for everybody to weigh in, they again start taking turns around the table. They ask, if they haven't heard the opinion of somebody, they will ask, we haven't heard from you. Can you speak up on this? What is your opinion of this? Are you still thinking? They also key into body language a lot. And that looks like you're still thinking about this, or it doesn't look like you fully agree. If 3 of them agree and 1 maybe doesn't, someone will bring up, it doesn't look like you're fully on board with this. What else do we need to do? What else do we need to say? What do we need to understand? What idea are you having, or what question do you have right now? And that's very helpful to keep this team focused and feeling like everybody is part of the team. Things that they have to watch out for: going too fast, skipping over parts of the agenda, not adding to the agenda ahead of the discussion. So making sure, again, that they just don't, and the structure of the meeting and the rapidity of the structure really helps them with this. But because they are a faster paced team, it would be natural for them to want to add things. But also, it's sometimes is a challenge for this team that they don't add agenda items ahead of the discussion. Now, they try really hard, and there are reminders and systems built in to have them put those agenda items in place that they want discussed, because for the reflective thinker, it's going to be great to know what's on the agenda. And frankly, for the initiators, it's good to know what everybody is most concerned about so that they can quickly prioritize what's the discussion that's most important. Everybody will come to that meeting thinking that their discussion is most important, but when compared to the other discussions or decisions to be made, they can come to agreement on which is truly the most important. Another area for this results-focused team to watch out for is the impact of their decisions on their extended team and on their clients. Because this team is very focused on results, driving to those results, they have to pause and slow themselves down and think about what's going to be the impact on our people if we choose to make this decision right now. Are there things that how do we need to communicate this? To whom do we need to communicate this? Are we communicating the why and the understanding of what we are doing, or are we just giving people bits and pieces? And helping the team really understand why decisions are made and how that's going to impact them and what that impact is going to be is really useful. And if they don't watch out for that, it may be that decisions get made and people feel left out of the loop and people feel like they don't understand what's happening in the organization. So they do sometimes take time to say, what needs to be disseminated out of this meeting? What are you going to tell your teams? What are we not able to tell our teams right now? To help make sure that that messaging is clear and that those messages that need to cascade through the organization have a clear owner and a clear message to be cascaded. Another thing they have to watch out for is having too many ideas at once or taking on too many things. It's a very highly fast-paced, results-focused team. They also happen to be a fairly highly creative team, so they have lots of ideas, lots of initiatives, lots of things that come up as they get new ideas, and they get new ideas all the time. I would say particularly, we've checked in, and particularly under this quarantine situation, new ideas, because there's some time for stillness, there's also time for tons of new ideas. And so they have worked really hard to focus on what are the top priorities and what are the top goals. And while there are lots of other ideas, finding a place to put those ideas and staying true to the strategy and the focus that they have has been really helpful. And it's helpful to not overwhelm the team as well. Already, all of our teams everywhere in the world are impacted in some way by the pandemic going on, and that leads to increased stress levels. And so for a results-focused team, that may look like trying harder to drive to result. For more relational team members, that's going to look more like trying harder to build relationship and hang on and feel secure in relationship. And so it's really important to be clear about your objectives, be clear about your goals, communicate them well, and meet them out a little bit so that you're not dumping tons of new ideas on an organization and completely overwhelming it, but being very clear about the 2 or 3 top priorities that everyone needs to have in mind. And the way that they adapt for these areas of opportunity that they could watch out for and to work with the larger team is that they do check in with the extended team. Each of the team leaders that has responsibility for other team members is responsible for checking in with their teams, but they also check in with one another's teams to make sure that everybody feels like they have the right messaging, they understand things in the same way. They also try very consciously to slow themselves down to make sure that not only is the leadership team on board, but once they've disseminated the message to the rest of the team, does the team understand it? Do they have clear instructions? And that leads to the third point, providing really clear instructions and steps on what has to happen next. They have worked on creating videos for team members, written instructions for team members, infographics for team members, so that they're communicating in a bunch of different styles and that their message is clear and stays clear across all of these styles. But the other thing is not to, and this is something that they do have to think about and adapt to, is not just, here's the thing I need you to do, but here's the why we need you to do it as well. Here's how it ties to our larger purpose. Here's how it ties to one of our significant goals. Here's how your role in this provides a critical part of the organization. And that really helps people get bought in with these new directives and these new changes that are coming out. If you can help people understand why, and even if you're not the one setting the direction, and even if you're not the one that has the original why, can you tie what you're asking people to do to the larger purpose? And if you can't, can you ask your leader to help you do it? Because I think it's really important for people to understand what they're doing clearly and why they're doing it, because that helps people buy in and take ownership of and be able to make better decisions. I've often seen that we depend on our leaders to make decisions, but if they don't have good inputs, they can't make good decisions. And so I think being really clear about what we're asking for and why we're asking for it is very helpful. So as a result of the work that this team does to be clear about goals, to be clear about slowing down and trying to be more relational, they were able to meet their Q1 goals at a 94% completion rate. They deprioritized a couple of things that got canceled. They have a few that are carrying over that took a little bit longer than they thought. And they've paused on some goals that were not as critical. And then we'll evaluate whether those become goals in Q2 or whether they move on to something else or whether they just stay on hold. And they use the term rocks. This is from the book Traction, and the system that they use is the traction system. Rocks are large projects or goals that several people have to contribute to get done. And so that's how they're tracking here. And so the way that that feels then from this results-focused leadership team, what they hear from their extended team are things like, I'm grateful for this team and the opportunity to work with great people. It's so nice to be part of such a great team, and we all deserve credit for this success. And I couldn't have gotten to completion without so much help from the team. Thanks, everyone. So the team really does feel like a team. Even though they're driven and led by a team that tends to be naturally very results focused, because that team is also very behaviorally aware, they take a lot of steps to make what they do clear focus on results, but also take into account relationship. So I want to pause there for just a minute and ask, do we have any questions out there? Or are there any comments or questions that you would like to ask about what I just covered about kind of this? And I'm going to go into more detail next about what I mean by results focused and what some of the behaviors and traits are for results focused. But just as I talked about this, I think I've given you some insights into what some of that looks like, and just wanted to ask if you can drop into chat if you have any questions or comments around what I've talked about so far.
And Nikki, going back to the first poll, I see one interesting answer here from Philip Manwaring. I know we're not able to take the poll as is, but Philip said what he missed the most is brief interactions directly with coworkers that now require a 15-minute scheduled calls. And we're on the same page on this, Philip.
Yeah,
What's your thought on
tough.
that, Nikki?
That's tough. And that's where we found on the DNA team that having a chat program where we can live have those kind of quick conversations with one or two other people has been really helpful for us. And it's something that we've leaned on even more in the last few weeks. If it's not possible for you, I can understand why everything feels more scheduled. We were able to adopt a Microsoft Teams, and that allows us real-time chat with one another, and it has opened up those opportunities for those brief interactions that are unscheduled And if someone can't answer a chat right at that moment, then it's kind of the same as them having their head down at their desk, busy, and you kind of know not to interrupt them right in that moment. But then they can come back up and answer you when it's possible. So hopefully we can find more things like that where we can use programs that allow more real-time communication. But definitely that is something to be missed in an office environment. So I'm going to move now to talking more about what these results-focused profiles have in common. And I am overgeneralizing, and as you really dive into DNA behavior and understanding what we do, you can get very detailed, very accurate insights about particular personalities and particular profiles. But what I'm trying to do here is just give you if you had to guess, does somebody tend to be more results focused or more relational? You can probably get there, and maybe even do they tend to move and think at a quick pace, or do they tend to take more time and be more careful and thoughtful before they speak up? So that kind of gives you where they fall in on this grid. And so if you can estimate about people based on the behavior that you've seen from them, whether they are results focused or more relationally focused, my hope is, and our intention with this webinar series, is to help you, even if you don't have a powerful tool like this, to make an educated guess and then look at some of the commonalities that these profiles have in common, where you can get really specific, accurate insights with a profile. You can get pretty close if you look at people that tend to be more results focused, what they have in common. So in general, these people tend to be very visionary. They tend to be fairly logical. They tend to be evolutionary, cutting edge. They'll think of new ideas. They like to build on ideas or come up with new creative ways to do things. And they tend to be very determined to get to their goal. They like to see accomplishments. They get a sense of satisfaction at seeing a job completed or seeing a job turned over to somebody else. So some of these results focused styles, particularly the faster paced styles, will like the idea and they will like getting it started, but they may not want to follow that idea all the way down to dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's and getting all the way across the finish line. But understanding that the idea lives on and the idea is being implemented so that they can move on to the next idea, may be something that they enjoy. And then the more careful profile styles, those that think a little bit before they'll speak up, the reflective thinker and the stylish thinker, will require more precision and technical detail than their faster paced counterparts. So that means that while the initiators and the strategists and the influencers may be better with bullets and high level details, those more careful styles will value more precision. They will want the I's dotted and the T's crossed. But overall, if you're looking at results focused, you're looking at logical, determined, visionary people. So what are they afraid of then in general? So for the faster paced styles, they fear losing control, not having authority that they need to drive results, losing credibility or respect. They tend to see themselves as leaders. They tend to want to have control, make decisions, take charge of things. And so what they are afraid of then is losing control or not having authority or losing that credibility or respect. But they get alienated if they have too many details or if they're too confined to a routine. If they don't have enough space to be innovative and visionary and cutting edge, that can really alienate those faster paced, results focused styles. For the more careful styles, the reflective thinker and the stylish thinker, they fear more appearing incompetent to others. They fear not having time to prepare. Not having the right information, you'll see these people not speak up in a meeting if they don't feel prepared or if they don't feel like they've had time to think something all the way through. They will be alienated by being rushed into a decision or not having input into a decision. So if you're making decisions that directly impact their work and they aren't in on the decision making or haven't been given any information about why that decision is being made. They don't have input because typically they have the details. They can feel very alienated if they don't get to be a part of that decision making. So what do they want, these results-focused profiles? They want direct and clear communication. They want to see progress and results. And they want reliability in performance from themselves and from others. And then when you're working with results-focused profiles, for those faster-paced styles, help them establish realistic goals and expectations. One thing that I see that I think is universal, no matter what style, communicating expectations is so important in doing work and collaborating with a team. So helping results-focused people set realistic goals and expectations for one another, because they're so focused on those results, sometimes what they expect to happen may not fit in with the culture of the organization or with the team that they're working with. And so helping them really establish what will be realistic in our environment with our resources. Encourage them to delegate details or provide them support on those more detailed tasks. Like I said, these styles, particularly for the faster paced, results oriented people, want to see the result, but they don't want to get bogged down in the details. So if those details are important, how can you pair them with somebody that can help get those details out? And then they like to see action being taken on their ideas and their plans. So helping them understand how their ideas and plans are moving forward is a great way to help support and help them perform better and maximize their potential. For the more careful results-focused style, like the reflective thinker will enjoy the details and detailed tasks. So to help them perform better, help agreeing to deadlines and discussing the level of accuracy that's needed. Reflective thinkers will be very comfortable with heavy details, and they will be very concerned with being precise and accurate. And so helping them know when the job is done, when enough is enough, when good enough is enough, when it's accurate enough, can be really helpful, so that particularly with the faster paced results focused people, you're setting clear expectations of, does this have to be perfect or does this have to be good enough, and what does good enough look like? Can be very helpful for a reflective thinker not to go down too far of a rabbit hole. And then giving them time to think and prepare for how they're going to perform and what it is that they need to do is super supportive and feels great. This is where if you can send a reflective thinker an agenda ahead of a meeting, they're going to feel much better. This is why on our meeting today, Leon didn't tap a reflective thinker on our team to do this, because that would have felt completely out of sorts. It would have completely upended their day. It would have felt completely unreasonable and difficult for them to flex to something that they had no time really to think and prepare about. It would have put them on the spot a little bit. And so we didn't ask a reflective thinker to join us here today. For the stylish thinker, while they're also really careful and results focused, they really enjoy having opportunity where the reflective thinker might prefer to work alone. The stylish thinker really prefers opportunity to collaborate with others and to gain some recognition and respect for the work that they're doing. Like I said, they're an interesting profile. They are very results focused, but they're also outgoing, and they have that need, like you'll see in some of our more relational profiles, to have some recognition, to be seen and heard and appreciated for their contributions. So
Right,
our
thanks.
Yep, go ahead.
Thanks, Nikki. So we're halfway through. We're time for a second poll question. Same thing, since we don't have the polling function, you can just type in your answers, send it to me privately. It's up to you. Send it to the panel, to everyone, and just be yourself. Poll question number 2. Do you tend to be more results focused or relationship focused? Number 1, results. 2, relationship. 3, I think I am in between. So get those answers up. Thank you. Just give them a few seconds. I hope those light bulbs are already lightening with the learnings that we have from Nikki, how important each role is in a team. So let's get those answers. Right? Are you coming in? So Nikki, I guess you can continue while I check on those answers.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to do another case study of a results focus that almost derailed the team. So we worked with a company where there was a new CFO who happened to be an initiator, came into a higher education organization, which was a very relational culture. The CFO came in while there was a major implementation going on of their ERP system. It was just wrapping up. It had some major issues going on. Their reporting was off. The auditors couldn't get information that they needed. It was a kind of a disaster what was happening with this implementation. The CFO came in with the belief that it was a poorly constructed group and wanted to fire everybody in the group. And so the plan that the CFO came to was, we're going to just fire everybody in this group. We're going to bring in a big 5 consulting firm, and we're just going to start a new team. We're going to just have consultants do this for us for a while, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do next. Huge impact to the organization if this action had been followed. So what happened is they made a call to DNA behavior, and we came in and were commissioned to do DNA profile assessment with everybody. Whoa, I can't say profile assessment because I typically say discovery. I threw myself off here. And a workshop, as well as the team was tasked with doing a 90-day roles and responsibility overview exercise. So they took the discovery and began to start to understand each other a little bit better, understanding the strengths and struggles of each team member, and began to figure out and have richer conversations with one another. The team of 30 was actually broken into 2 sub-teams, but this shows this team of 30 plus their 2 leaders and kind of the mix of results and relationship that you saw on this team. The team members, though, were paired into small groups and each assigned a project to review part of the organization and to read out on responsibilities and strategies for that area and strategies for helping overcome the issues that they were seeing in this ERP project. So again, they all knew, or most of them knew, that there was significant disappointment about where they were in the process and what was happening with this system. Some of them knew that jobs were on the line, but they started to have better conversations with one another. The leader of the team started to notice that people were gathering socially where they hadn't ever before. Team members that seemed very adversarial were now gathered together and finding things to bond over because they started to understand how they were wired a little bit better, why behaviors were showing up the way they were showing up in this team. And so what ended up happening was the team solved some major issues in this 90-day window. And I think that was in part because they had something objective to look at about why people were behaving the way they were behaving, what that really meant, and how to talk about it, some common language to really talk about what was working and not working in the team, who was working in what role and not in the team. And they were able to find commonalities, have this common language, and then start to really look at the impact that they were having on one another and the impact that they needed to have on the larger organization. When they started socializing with one another and they had this common language, they had better communications with one another. At the end of the 90 days, when they did their readouts for their strategy and the roles and responsibilities for the team, the CFO was completely blown away about the structure that the team came up with, about the deliverables that came out of the project, was pleased beyond belief with how things turned out. No one was fired, which was a significant savings for the department and for the institution, because if you think about having to fire 30 people and then rehire some of those roles and pay consultants to come in and do that work until you could figure out how to design an organization and then go through the hiring process and the onboarding process for 30 new people in a department could be hugely disruptive and extremely expensive. So by really understanding behavior and building on some commonalities, they were really able to find significant savings for the institution, as well as save 30 jobs. One team member actually, though, did leave this department to go to another because he realized that he just wasn't a good fit in this department. Like, behaviorally, what the department needed from him and what his role was going to require was really a bad fit for him. And not because he wasn't a good worker or committed to the work or committed to helping the department get what they needed, but what he realized is it was going to require so much behavioral flex for him every day to do a good job in that role that he elected to find a job in a different department, and was helped by the leadership to find a job in a department where he could add value and flow more with his natural behavior style. And so that was kind of the outcome. So while no one was fired, one person did self-elect to move to a different group, because the role was no longer, once those roles were really clearly defined and everybody had expectations, he understood that he wasn't going to be able to meet those expectations really well. But a much better way to have somebody invite themselves to leave a team and be successful someplace else in the organization versus firing 30 people. So we're really proud of the work that the organization did, but also of how really understanding these behaviors and treating people like they want to be treated and understanding people at this level can really have a significant impact on an organization. So lastly, I want to talk a little bit about what happens when you have somebody that's very results focused and you need them to be a little more relational. When they're leaning on their visionary, logical, determined, bottom line results selves, and you need them to consider and adapt to some other folks on your team, asking them to adapt and giving them specific behaviors can really help them. So one behavior is to slow their pace down. Physically speak slower, mentally write ideas down maybe, but don't say them all out loud. Take turns sharing. Allow other people to share ideas before they do. For some people, this is really difficult. I've found that asking people to count I one time had a leader who was very frustrated because my team couldn't answer questions quickly. When he posed a question to the team, they needed some time to think about it, and he felt like that meant that they didn't have an opinion. And I said, that's not true. They just need time to think about it. In addition to the fact that they were just behaviorally wired to probably need a little bit more time to think about it, several of them were translating his question from English to their native language, their answer from their native language back to English, and it takes some time. And so I said to my leader, can you count to 100? Can you ask a question and then count silently to yourself to 100? Believe me, if you silently count to 100, that space will seem forever to someone that's high, fast-paced, high results. But in reality, it gives people enough time to formulate an idea and come up with an answer. His response to me was, can I count to 10 by twos? And I said, you can, but that's not giving my team the kind of time that they need. But that's what a results-focused, fast-paced, results-focused profile sounds like. And so it's how do you get that person to slow down? Can you get them to take a couple of deep breaths? Can so helping them really slow down. Forcing them to allow other people to share before them. Creating some time for chit chat to get to know other team members, and making that part of the result that you need from them. I am very results focused and was working at one time in my career as a consultant. And as a consultant, it was at that time drilled into us, you're a billable hour and you're only there to drive results for the client. And so that was my mindset going into an organization that was highly relational. And it became clear to me that I wasn't getting the kind of results that other people were, because I didn't have relationships built with people. And because this was such a relational organization, that spending time with somebody to get to know them a little bit better, to hear a little bit about their life, to learn something about them and connect with them as a person was in fact part of my job now, because that's how I was going to get results at this organization. And so even reframing that, you know, you're not wasting time when you're talking to coworkers about things that they care about and things that are important to them. You're building relationship that you're going to need to drive the results that you want to get. And so sometimes thinking about and framing it as a result, if they really feel like that's just a waste of time, framing it as a result that you need from them. I need you to know 3 personal things about somebody on the team by, you know, Wednesday of next week. Will force them to do some relational work in order to get the result that you've asked for from them, which is know 3 things about somebody and report them back to me. And then including their thought process when they're explaining decisions that they make. So if you can ask them to explain why they are making the decisions that they are making, sometimes that can be very helpful, particularly with faster paced decision makers. A lot of times people that are more relational will feel like their ideas didn't get considered, when in fact that high, fast-paced, high results person has gotten the last piece of information they needed by the last word that came out of my mouth, so they now make a decision right away. Helping that results-focused person that's giving me that information understand that I just heard what you just said and that was the last piece that I needed. You just confirmed for me what I think the decision needs to be, and that's why I'm making this decision now. For the more careful results-focused people, they have tons of data and they may want to share all of that data, and that may lose and disconnect with more relational profiles as well. And so having them just explain at a high level, this is why I think it's going to be better, this is how I think it's going to lead us to better results and better relationship, can really help. So having that results-focused individual explain their thought process a little bit more. It doesn't have to be long. And I'm not saying justify your decisions, but just explain what went into your decision making, so that if people that are working with them, the more relational people working with them, feel like they're not actually listening or being heard, if they can explain their thought process, sometimes that alleviates that tension that they're not being heard, because they do then hear that thought process was taken into consideration. Sometimes this happens between the faster paced and more careful workers as well. So just something to keep in mind there. And with that, I will turn it back over to Lisa.
Thank you, Nikki. So in a nutshell, communication can be quite a derailer, like Nikki said. The case studies discussed may have manifested in your respective teams or in your respective firms already. So I hope we've helped you somehow alleviate some of the issues. With the use of DNA tools, we can identify if your teammate is results focused or relationship oriented. With the use of our tools, you can analyze how to communicate and flex based on our natural behavior. Goals are achieved, relationships are nurtured and deepened, and those are just some of the positive outcome of DNA behavior. So to wrap it up, I just want to take the 3rd poll. For our next webinar, would you like to see more case studies on virtual team effectiveness, more case studies on individual comparison differences, more case studies on leader and team member effectiveness, or more training on how to use the tools? Again, you can type in your answers in chat boxes. And the result for poll number 2 earlier, we have 75% of our attendees being results focused. So, and the rest are the relationship oriented.
Awesome. And since we have the opportunity for chat without the poll today, if you have other topics that aren't listed here that you would like to hear more about, we would love for you to just drop those in the chat for us as well.
Thank you. And I'd like everyone to know about Hugh's book. We have Leadership Behavior DNA. This is available online on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and other online bookshops. It's a good read. It's a statistical research and data from millions of our clients. And so while staying at home on lockdown, why not grab a book and let's be productive. Right. So our next webinar will be on April 15th at 3 p.m., same time, same day. just register even if you won't come in live because I'm going to send the recording anyway. So we'll see you again next week. And if you have other questions, just contact me, Leon, or Nikki, or support at or inquiries at dnabehavior.com. We also have a chat function on the website, so you're free to ask questions. Do we have any other questions so far from the attendees?
Nope, looks like we've got a couple of responses on our poll here, and I think we are good to go.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. See you again next week.
Thank you.
Bye.